What's going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 91 of the Book Binge, where this week we're doing a little bit more, not really a discussion video, but just kind of, one of my more one-off kind of topics that I'm not going to cover, basically again in the future, just kind of a fun video idea that I had and figured I would record. This one is going to be me talking about kind of why I review pretty much every single book that I read and some of the motivations behind that, some of the reasoning, some of the sort of different categories of reasons for that. It's just going to be, a different type of video. No clue how this is going to go. No clue how long it's going to be. It's probably a really short video. It will also likely be a disaster, but I'm okay with that. Let's just kind of, talk about some of these things. Now, I haven't had anybody ask me why I review every book I read, but I feel like it's kind of one of those things that some other channels might get questions about, since some other channels don't read every book they read. In fact, they often don't review books they read anymore. BookTube at this point in time has gotten to a point where there's just not that many reviews. And I know that I have less reviews on my channel than all of my other non-review stuff combined, just proportionally. But I still review everything I read. The reason I don't have that many reviews, technically speaking, is because I read slow, so it takes me a while to get through books. I can't review a book that I haven't read yet. But with that being said, I feel like at this point in time, I can kind of say that I'm sort of setting myself apart from a little bit more of BookTube, just because I do so many book reviews and because I review pretty much everything I read. And I think part of the reason that I do that is because I have a very completionist type of, mentality. That is my mindset. That's kind of how I behave with a lot of my different projects that I do. If I start something, that I've got to finish it for the most part. That's how I am with games. This is why I'd like to get, I'm kind of a trophy hunter to a degree, so long as it's not too tedious or too time consuming or too difficult. Like if it's just, if it's a platinum trophy that I can get fairly easily, I have no reason not to get it. I'm going to get it. That's kind of how I am. It's how I am with a lot of games in terms of percentages. I get 100% in a lot of the games that I play for the same reason. I just kind of have this completionist mindset. If I don't complete something, then it's kind of always there in the back of my mind. If I read a book, I kind of want to review it. In fact, I have on the sidebar of my notes page here that I, do everything for my Book Binge series at this point from. In the sidebar, I have a folder of 6 or 7 videos that I need to record, like reviews that I need to do for books that I've read that I haven't gotten the chance to record yet. And the reason I have that there is because I still want to review them, and because I feel like I need to review them, because I know if I don't, I'll always be thinking about them. Plus, there's a couple of those that I just straight up need to review in the first place because I want to talk about them anyway. Sometimes I do full series reviews instead of doing individual reviews of books. This is kind of like what I did with Riordan and a couple other things, since ain't nobody gonna watch full review videos for every single individual one of those books, especially when nobody's watching the full review videos for like Riordan in the first place anyway. That's besides the point, but you kind of get what I'm going for. If I read a book, I'm going to review it in some format. Otherwise, I think a lot of my reasoning comes down to a sort of form of expectations, I suppose. You never know how a video is going to perform. Like, as the creator, I never know how a video is going to perform. I never know, especially where weird or random or even obscure books are going to, just pop off. For example, my review of The Bird Book, which is The Obscene Bird of Night by Jose Donoso, is, I want to say it's my second most popular book review, or my second most viewed / watched. It might be number 3, it might be number 1, but it's somewhere in that top 3 somewhere. And then my review of The Wrath of Darth Maul by Ryder Wyndham is also in the top 3, and Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen is also in the top 3, I think. I think that's in the third individual review. If not, it's pretty close. It definitely got the most views in the shortest amount of time. Those are, essentially my most viewed reviews, and as for the first 2 examples with the Bird Book and the Darth Maul book, those are ones that are continuously getting views. So I would say like the trajectory, of most videos in terms of their views is like this. Well, I suppose I should probably put my hand in frame, huh? So it's like this for the first couple days, first few days, like first week, it gets up to here, but then the rest of its lifetime, it like flattens out and maybe gets a few more views a little bit, but that's pretty much the life cycle. With both the Bird Book and the Wrath of Darth Maul, it's been pretty much like this the entire time. So I'm consistently getting views on those videos. I never would have expected that for either of those. I did not think either of those would be the case, especially with the Wrath of Darth Maul being, I think, my 5th video on this channel, or my 5th review, my 3rd review, I don't know for sure. It's somewhere. It was released in January of 2022, so basically my first month of doing BookTube. In fact, for my 100th Book Binge episode, I'm going to be reacting to a couple of my early episodes. This one is going to be one of them, since I want to, see how cringe I was in the early days, but also the fact that this video continuously gets views is kind of concerning to me if it's cringe like I think it is. Either way, some of those are my most viewed videos, continuously getting views, and I have no clue why. I never would have expected that, but they are that way. If I didn't review the Bird Book, or if I didn't review the Wrath of Darth Maul, I never would have known that they would be amongst my most popular videos, More recently, like I said, with Pride and Prejudice, I have had videos that have been highly overperforming, even reviews for Master and Margarita that overperformed. Master and Margarita especially is one that's like, never would have thought that would have gotten as many views as it did, but it did. Even though it's a really weird book, it's one of the most popular books in Russian literature, but I think in most reading circles, especially on BookTube, it's a pretty obscure, unknown, or random book, yet it got popular reception for me. There have been cases where sequels to certain books have gotten more views than previous books in the series. There are some reviews like Kingdoms of Death and Ashes of Man by Christopher Rocchio that got more views than any of the previous books in the series did. With Dark Tower, there were a couple reviews later in the series. I want to say my Dark Tower review got quite a few views. I want to say my Wolves of the Kala one got relatively a lot of views as well. Like The Wastelands by Stephen King, 3rd book in the Dark Tower, has 6 views. It's one of I think it might be my least performing review, period. Like, of all of my book reviews, I think it has the least reviews, but it's in the middle of a series. There are books after it. Every book after it has more views than it does. How does that make sense? Stuff like this, I would never know or be able to see the trends for or understand if I didn't review all of the books that I wanted to read. On the completely other hand of the spectrum of what we've been talking about just now, sometimes there are videos that I would think would get plenty of views or get a normal amount of views that don't. Like, there was a couple videos that I did within the past 3 or 4 months that got below average views when I thought they would get above average. Sometimes videos I think will do well just don't do well, and some videos that I think won't do anything do really well. Because of that, I have more reason to review all of the books I read, because I can't anticipate what book reviews are going to be popular or not. Why not just cover them all, is basically my reasoning. Lord of the Rings is an example of this. Neither of those 3 reviews did well at all. Like, not even a little bit well. Granted, Lord of the Rings and Tolkien content doesn't do horribly well on BookTube in the first place anyway, because everybody already knows that stuff is good. And those were within my first couple months of BookTube, but, all things considered, they got a heck of a lot less traction than I thought they would even back then. So yeah, part of it does come down to the expectations of the performance. Like I said, why not review everything and just kind of see what happens? The other part of it is the broad general viewership, just in general. Like I said, people come to know me and understand some of my tastes and preferences by understanding what I review, and this is a lot of the reason why I do a lot of spoiler-free reviews. I rarely do spoiler-filled stuff. If I do, they're specifically marked as such. If I ever do a spoiler talk in a video, sorry for grossly mispronouncing that word. English is hard. If I ever do spoiler talks in a video, such as I did, like, I didn't actually talk about spoilers in my Ashes of Man review, but I did go into kind of like quasi-spoiler territory. In Kingdoms of Death, I actually went into spoilers in that review. When I do that, I make very clear that I'm going into spoilers during that small section of video or whatever it is. But the rest of the video is all spoiler-free, and that's how I've been with all of my general reviews. Even with the Dark Tower, all of those 7 main reviews are all spoiler-free, even though the ranking of the full series that I did afterwards, I went into full spoilers for each book. The actual reviews were still spoiler-free. I think if I do this, then people have a welcome chance of getting into any of the books that I'm reading, understand what I enjoy or what I don't about particular elements of each of those books, and then they can just kind of move along without having to worry about spoilers or, without having to do anything. But people who follow the channel more, like I said, get a general sense of what I like and dislike, so they can kind of understand how to relate those to me. I have several, like, video game and book reviewers that I like to watch a lot of. One of them I disagree with on almost everything, but I enjoy his content and I watch his stuff, and I can still use his stuff as reference. If he enjoys a particular book for a particular reason, I can be like, okay, that's actually something that I tend to enjoy, and we tend to have opposite opinions on this thing. I'm interested in that book now. Or vice versa. If there's somebody who I tend to share a lot of opinions with, if they dislike something for reasons similar to what I tend to dislike stuff for, I'm going to be a little bit less interested in that book for similar reasons. Like, if you just understand a certain booktuber's taste in different books, especially across a wide variety of genres, because I've done sci-fi stuff, I've done fantasy stuff, I've done a lot of classic stuff, relatively broad scale of different videos, of different books and stuff, like, once people know you well enough, plenty of them are just curious as well to see what you have to say on anything that you read, and that's just kind of cool to me. So that's another reason why I do it as well. Finally, it comes down to content. I release tons of videos, and I like to have a consistent schedule, and I don't want to I don't want to flood my channel with just book reviews, but I read enough to be able to do a book review nearly every Tuesday. And because at this point I've been doing videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I just kind of relegate book reviews to being on Tuesdays. And then whatever other random book-related stuff I want to do, that goes on Thursdays. It just kind of comes down to schedule. If I review everything I read, it's actually harder to run out of content as well. This is why I have 6 or 7 reviews waiting on the backlog for me to record and get, videos made for, because they're still waiting. I have yet to run out of those reviews to do. So that's another reason why I do them as well. I also kind of mentioned this, I believe, in the introduction and in a couple other points, throughout this video and kind of this discussion, I guess you could call it. I think reviews are generally just pretty underrated at this point on BookTube. Why release a half a dozen to full dozen Book Binge videos on my channel and only 1 or 2 of them be reviews? Like, sure, there's plenty of different content you can make about books. That's why I have my Thursday episodes. But if I'm doing a lot of reading and I'm not actually covering the books that I'm reading, except for in like wrap-ups and stuff like that, just with 1 or 2 minutes relegated to each book, yeah, I enjoyed this because of, whatever broad, vague reason, that doesn't really give these books or these authors enough time to shine. There are plenty of authors that deserve more coverage than that, and even authors that don't need the coverage, like, say, Brandon Sanderson, when I get around to reading him, or Wheel of Time, which definitely doesn't need the coverage. Some of those bigger ones that don't need the coverage, they have fan bases of people who want to see what other people think. And there's another reason to review them, is because if people want to see what a random booktuber like me has to think about a random book, that's pretty cool. Like, why not review it, That's the other thing. It's like, other types of content is fun. I absolutely love doing it, and I absolutely respect people who do that, but I just enjoy talking about books in general. I do a lot of reading. I want to talk about what I read. I've said this a couple points up to this point. Anybody at any point might wonder what somebody else thinks of a random book. Book reviews are also kind of, they're going to be the videos that get the most views over time. They may not get the most views immediately, but books that people are interested in reading or might think of at some point in time, somebody 40 years down the road could randomly want to see if there's somebody who has a review of The Obscene Bird of Night by Jose Donoso somewhere, and they could look it up and find my video. The likelihood of that happening isn't high, but that could always happen. Somebody might just randomly want to see what somebody thinks. Whereas temporary stuff, like, this is also why I kind of do discussion videos. Like, they're going to be more broadly popular. But they're also more broadly popular immediately. Things like monthly wrap-ups and TBRs, people are going to watch when they come out, but 2 years down the line, nobody cares what I read in April of 2023 and what I'm going to read in May of 2023. Like, nobody cares about that in 2025. That doesn't matter. But if I've reviewed, say, All of the Sun Eater, or if I've reviewed Eye of the World, or if I've reviewed whatever other random book it is that I've reviewed on my channel, or will review on my channel, or whatever the case may be, in 3 years, somebody wants to see what somebody thinks of that book. That video is still entirely relevant. Like, reviews remain relevant essentially forever. That's basically the point that I'm trying to make. If I've read a book and I've reviewed it, the video's there forever. If I've read a book and I haven't reviewed it, people miss out on my potential input. Whether they respect my opinion or not, doesn't matter. Whether you respect my opinion or not, doesn't really matter. If the video's not there, if I just don't make a review about a particular book, that book lacks an inherent amount of discussion that it may have otherwise gotten. Like, there's potential there, you know? Furthermore, I miss out on others' input. Like, if I've read a book, but I don't review it, people can't watch it and therefore provide their feedback or what they think of that book. I miss out on other people's input just as much as they miss out on mine if I don't review a book. Like, there's just, like, what it comes down to is there's no reason why I shouldn't review all the books that I read. And I read at a pace that actually makes it pretty easy, relatively easy to do more or less one review almost every Tuesday and keep that consistent schedule. Like, it just works so well for me. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't. I don't see any reason why I can't. I don't see any reason why I don't need to. Like, nearly everything about what I'm doing with book reviews is a benefit for me and my channel, to be completely honest. Even if it, you know, doesn't cause my channel to blow up the same way. Like, if I'm not doing 5 videos a week about random topics that are getting a lot of views in the first 3 days, but then never get views again, what's the point? I want to have lasting content, and reviews are more lasting content, if that makes any sense. Overall, in conclusion, I know I've rambled a lot, especially the last few minutes, and probably nobody watched this video, but that's okay. At least now I have a resource to point people to if they happen to ever wonder why I do what I do, or if they happen to complain about, you know, specific booktubers maybe who don't review a lot of the books that they read. I can be like, well, I review a lot of the books that I read. If you happen to be interested in any of the stuff that I read, or if you want to know about any of the stuff that I read, I do reviews if you want to do that. Like, kind of shameless self-promotion there in that regard, I guess, to use this as a resource for that purpose. But to an extent, I think anybody watching this video might think that it makes sense, or at least I'd hope they think it makes sense. Either way, yeah, that is the end of this video. Sorry for rambling a bit too much at the end of it here, but I just thought that this was a fun discussion to get into, and I actually surprised it went on like, this recording is like 10 minutes longer than I was thinking the recording would be. I don't know how long the video is going to be, maybe about 5 minutes longer than I thought it would be, but we'll kind of see what happens with that, how much I decide to cut. Maybe I won't cut anything because I felt like I wasn't relying as much on my notes for this video as I tend to normally do, which kind of felt a little bit more organic in a way. But like I said, this video is probably a disaster, and nobody probably watched it anyway. Either way, thank you guys for watching. If you did, I'll be back on Tuesday with, I believe it's my June reading wrap-up and July TBR. I think I accidentally said that at the end of last week's video, when the next video was in fact not that. That's actually what's coming out this next Tuesday, I believe. But then again, I could also still be wrong. I could just be completely jumbled, and that's fine as well. But either way, thank you guys for watching. If you did, I'll be back in the next video.